into yourself, but maybe you're just drawn out to see the things that hurt. I wasn't expecting it to hurt that much. And to be honest with you, I've walked it 3 times, and after each time, over the next few evenings, I had bad dreams, and it made me very, very sad.
Mm.
But I think the good part was it's an awakening, and it, because I'm allowing it to awaken me, it's good incentive to do better, to look at where we are in our country and make things better.
Blanche, you want to share your observations with us?
Okay, Dee, thank you. I looked at what Lisa asked us to do and to remember one particular part, but I was so overwhelmed with the whole thing that because I didn't want to wander too much in my thoughts, I've written something. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to read my thoughts, if you will. From the moment we stepped on the slave trail and read the first placard, I was overwhelmed with a sense of sadness and foreboding. Watching the fishing from the shore, wildflowers blooming along the trail, walkers and cyclists enjoying the path seemed incongruous and almost sacrilegious. The naked vines trailed upward, twisting around trees, reminding me of the manacled enslaved Africans who trod the path. Happy voices belied the sounds that must have been heard from those tortured and hopeless people. They must have been pained, frightened, angry, and yet unwilling to give up. At the end of the trail, there was time and space at the African burial ground to debrief in a solemn setting. I prayed for those who came before, those still suffering with attitudes of white supremacy, and all of us to one day, with true understanding and relationship, become God's beloved community.
Very nice. Thank you, Blanche, very much. Now, Tom, you didn't walk with us, but you've been on the trail several times before. You want to share what your thoughts are real quick?
Well, following the format here, we took because we only had one car, the group I went with, we took an Uber over to the beginning of it. And so we left downtown Richmond and went across the river. And when we got there, we realized the Uber driver didn't know where it was. For as many times as he's driven in the city of Richmond, apparently we were the first people who asked him to take us over there. And he dropped us off and there wasn't anybody there. And we walked that really pastoral trail. I think the real shocker for me and emotional component was we couldn't get to the cemetery that we were looking for at the end of the trail, because we had to go through a construction site and none of the workers knew where it was. And we walked around and we finally broke through. And just the shock of coming out under this, that must be 10 acres of grass underneath I-95 heading south. And it's very pastoral and beautiful. And we looked around and we finally saw the slave cemetery, the cemetery for enslaved people, went over there. And it was clear that this was visited quite a bit. That people in the community, and I assume they were African Americans, visited it regularly. They took fruit, they took flowers and jewelry and left it there for their own purposes in honor of those folks. And I was just overwhelmed at that point by the the trail that we had been on and that so many people had taken, and that it was so forgotten so quickly. And the city has just tried in any number of ways to either turn that into a baseball park or a brewery or whatever they could, basically to erase it. And the African-American community said, no, that wasn't going to happen. And it took them a long time to get it to where it is. And it needs improvement, it needs work, it needs attention, but it really needs people to go walk on it to experience that. So it was a powerful experience, and I felt that that would be something that, as we've heard tonight, there were people who went and had similar experiences. It makes it concrete. It makes this abstract thing we're talking about very concrete. And it was, it was very moving.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. I guess back to you, Lisa.
Thanks. Yeah, Warren and I joined Blanche and Len and Ruth and Dean on the 17th. And I was just really struck by as I said on Sunday, everything's looking like the layers to me now. So, the layers of history in the places where we were, the layers of meaning, and the layers that we kind of need to peel back as we try to look at these truths and reckon with them. So I was just grateful for the opportunity, and I was really interested when I was looking later at the map and reading about how the trail came to be, that it was right on 10 years since it was dedicated. It was April 10th, 2011. So that first group was there just one day before the 10th anniversary. And that's another layer, I guess, the layering of dates and times that feels very powerful to me too. So thank you all. And I'm going to turn it over to Kay and Jackson to tell us about what they're dreaming up.
Thank you very much. Lisa, maybe Kay and I'll just lay out for you in real time how we thought we'd approach this, and you can give us any friendly amendments that occur to you. Thanks for having us both, and thanks to Kay for joining me in this. I'm sure y'all have already found that doing this kind of reading and thinking and working in community makes all the difference. And so having someone to lock arms with like Kay in the last year or so has really meant a great deal to me. So I'm glad that we are here together. We thought we would describe work that we have done in Kay's case for several years, and in my case for several months, that sort of led us to a class that we taught together last fall. And then from that has grown the project that we really want to talk to you about. But I think the iterative process of how we got here is, I think, both meaningful to us and maybe useful for how things develop over time among friends and good people. So at least in Kay's case. How does that sound?
Sounds great. Perfect. Thank you.
Kay, should we start on the Camino or in a very different place?
We can start on the Camino.
Let's start on the Camino.
Okay. Well, first of all, it's really wonderful to be here to talk with you about how this project came to life and is slowly gaining life. We're really, I think, just in the beginnings of it. But for me, it started on the Camino de Santiago with George Greenia, who introduced me to the Camino and in 2012, and we took students. We started a study abroad program there, and we took students on the Camino, and spent several summers there together teaching. And we had a student who was interested in looking at families, mothers who actually walk on the Camino and who might bring their young children with them, or who had to leave their children at home and what that meant to them. That was her project. And I'm a sociologist of family and religion. And so that I became really interested in families, thinking about families on the Camino, and watching her do this research, and being there and watching families who walked with their parents who walked with their young adult children. I became really fascinated by that. How did they come there? What did they expect? What their experience was like. And so I ended up doing several years of ethnographic study and interviewing people, walking the Camino, volunteering in the Pilgrim's Office. And just recently, my book just came out. It's called Walking the Way Together, How Families Connect on the Camino de Santiago. And I was really taken by how, in short, the argument in the book, or what I describe in the book, is how parents and their young adult children invested in the Camino as a practice that they saw for building spiritual intimacy. And by spiritual intimacy, I mean this idea that in practicing together, whether it's walking the Camino many hours every day, whether it's praying together, talking with other pilgrims, going to Mass together, just experiencing nature, in all of these ways, experiencing spirituality together connected them. And they talked about the deep impact that had in connecting them and connecting them with others. And they really told stories about how the Camino represented and taught them a larger kind of peace and direction and fellowship that they wanted to be present in their everyday lives. And so, in short, in long ethnographic story short, I was taken by the potential of the Camino. And I became interested in, as I was finishing the book, access, and thinking about who has access to the Camino. Most of the people that I interviewed had traveled the majority of the interviews were from US and Canada, and so they had traveled a long way, although I interviewed families from different countries as well. But who has access to the Camino, and who has access to pilgrimage, to think about connecting? And I started to think more about local pilgrimage, and I started to think about how we can build pilgrimage structures. And I just wanted to, this is very brief, this is just but because I feel so really touched to have heard your stories of the slave trail. At the end of my book, I talk about the slave trail and I started making connections and thinking about, where can we pour energies in locally? And so I just want to read one little bit here from the end of the book. I say, pilgrimage structures are marked with spiritual guideposts, symbols, or words that point a direction for physical movement. A shell or yellow arrow on the Camino, contemplative words, prayers, invitations to story one's own experience. As I pass a sign on the slave trail in my home city, it invites me, a white woman born in Virginia in the 1960s, to absorb and awaken historical points of racism with each step. And this is a quote from the sign. The trail follows the path of a heritage that has been challenged and broken by the chains of supreme degradation, and yet still found inspiration within itself. Please walk upon this trail. Continue this journey. and accept the history revealed, for it is our history. May every step lead us to a brighter future. The sign implies to me that all those who engage the path with sacred intention are a part of each other. We must contemplate the meaning of our history together to bring social justice. And so I found Jackson, thought about the class that Jackson had taught, and taking students on civil rights pilgrimage, thinking about the ways that how students experience a trip like this, thinking about the impact of that trip. And so I turned to Jackson, and we did a course with students this fall, thinking about, and of course it was very, a very challenging time for everyone, given all of the focus on racial injustice and police violence, and it was a very it was a very heavy time for students. So it was a challenging class, but it was also wonderful because we explored lots of different sites of memory in Richmond, around locally, and we thought about creative practices at these sites. And we decided to continue with these students in thinking about what it would mean to create a walk for transformation for social justice, and looking at racial injustices on campus in Williamsburg. And we are at the very beginning of this in many ways. So our path is open, and we have several students who are going to be working with us this summer. We're very excited about that. And we're really excited about linking together with other projects that are going on campus and in Williamsburg, and thinking about the construction of a walking trail, and perhaps even not just a trail, but support structures, thinking big. So Jackson, do you want to talk about your class? Or
Yeah, I'll just maybe say a word about the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, which everyone should visit at some point. And for someone who's from Alabama, and as I often tell my classes, there's a reason I'm from Alabama and not in Alabama, but for that person to recommend you're adding to the tax coffers of that great state, you know I'm going to recommend something really moving, and it is that and more. And that was really how I came to understand that pilgrimage studies is the area that it is, and Kay's been good to help me find my feet there. I was asked to give a lunch talk on campus, and the prompt was talk about something that has moved you recently, not unlike yours tonight, Lisa. And I talked about having visited the lynching memorial, as it's sometimes called, in Montgomery just a few weeks earlier with my wife. And the director of the group who had invited me said, you know, you really should teach a study away to Montgomery. And I guess you have to have a grandmother who didn't believe in coincidences, and said that, you know, good Christians shouldn't believe in coincidences to see that in the right light. So we did, and I've been twice, two different groups of students. It is both a civil rights pilgrimage of a kind and a close look at criminal justice in Alabama, in particular the state's death penalty practice, which is as bad as any other states in the nation. So we meet both with attorneys, advocates, lobbyists, and then also some heroes like Jeannie Gratz before she died, and Dr. Bernard Lafayette, who participated in the Freedom Rides and other civil rights leadership. So that has, and we were there a little over a year ago. We were there when the world truly shut down. Remarkably, the university let us complete our week. We flew home through Atlanta on March 15th and all made it back safe and sound. But thinking through, maybe just another word about the memorial, this is, and I'm sure you're aware of it and can read more on the EJI website, if not, but this is a 6 or 7 acre site that Brian Stevenson and his colleagues had to acquire really surreptitiously, understanding that Montgomery would not have welcomed, because as someone said earlier, erasure is such a part of our practice and history that Montgomery would not have been behind this initiative. So parcel here and parcel there, land is acquired, and now it's just an incredibly moving and well done acknowledgement of the thousands of African Americans in the late 19th, early 20th century, mid 20th century, late 20th century, who were murdered at the hands of white folks. And it's just it's a moving place to be. It's a moving place to be with young people, and it's different at different, like so many of these sites, it's different in the early morning, which is when I would recommend you go, when it's quiet. It's different when it's crowded full of tour buses of 4th and 5th graders, which is a different experience. But that really is the heart of the trip that I've led a couple of times. And the reflections and some of the students crossed over from my study away into Kay's and my class. And I think one thing we wanted to do, and the students really helped us do, is to try to understand the way that, in particular, young people changed. We focused in Richmond and in Minneapolis, but in other sites too, really made the sites of tragedy their own. In Richmond, in the case of Marcus David Peters Circle, as we call it now, and in Minneapolis at the site of George Floyd's murder, there's a joy there that emerged organically and from a community that grew up around those sites. And trying to better understand that process, to maybe recreate it on some very, very small scale, as Kay mentioned, I think just a weekly or every other week check-in with our students was of some use given the times we were living through. So that really is how my teaching flowed into what we did together. And then over the summer and into the fall, we really hope to take some of that onto campus and beyond, understanding that the city has a initiative that it's working on in terms of a heritage trail. We think the university has a lot to contribute, a lot to acknowledge. I guess just in recent days, we're making some very incremental steps along those lines, but I guess I can report I'm no longer sitting in Tyler Hall. I'm now sitting in Chancellor's Hall, although it took us about 30 seconds to realize that there were more slaveholders who were chancellors than there were named Tyler. Anyway, neither here nor there. Incremental change, I guess we would call it. but that really gets us to talk about what you asked us to talk about. So we beg your pardon for the long lead in.
No, the story's the best. That's all. I've got goosebumps.
So really what we hope, I think, to create is a space where our students, our colleagues, members of the community can come and reckon with our collective past, with the university's past, do so, we hope, in a creative way, as Kay mentioned.
We have we talked with the students a bit about incorporating some kind of digital technology that would make the walk even more accessible, and the history at different points. Like, for example, story maps, which is an app that can lead walkers to different points, and you can uncover the different histories. And I have not jumped into this program yet, but in speaking with, thinking about all the different ways digitally that we might be able to provoke some thought and some practice. If we don't, in thinking about the slave trail, the signs that we see along the way, how might we incorporate symbols in another way that encourage reflection and practice? So we're looking forward to thinking about that with the students. Yeah. I wanted to also say we're going to be announcing soon the Institute of Pilgrimage Studies on May 28th at 1:00. Jackson will be talking, we will have an event with Jackson and Allie Reckendorf from the Department of Political Science at VCU. And they've both, she led a trip fairly similar to, right, Jackson, to the trip that you led. So if anybody's interested in that, we can certainly make sure the link comes through, but we'll be announcing that soon.
I think just one additional already existing effort that we hope to work with and is really exciting. As many of you know, the students for months have been leading protests on Sunday afternoons and Saturday afternoons and other times too. And so as at least in my case, I usually find myself catching up to students in my thinking. And so I think the marches that they have been doing will hopefully add into the kind of walking that we hope to set up.
I mentioned before, there's several other projects going on campus and Williamsburg. So again, part of our effort is really to try to pull these together. So so if anyone knows of any efforts that we're not aware of or has any suggestions about that, I know the Social Justice Policy Initiative in sociology, some of the students have been working with the Local Black Histories Project, which is about bringing local Black histories to the K through 12 school system. Let Freedom Ring with the Baptist Church. I mean, there are lots of, there's a lot of different efforts at work. So I would just really say, if anybody, please send us a message, let us know if you have any suggestions, any directions that you think we could lead our students in. Most of what they're going to be doing is research this summer in thinking about what's there and what can happen. And so it would be wonderful if you knew of anything.
I was curious if you're hooked in with the Lemon Project.
Yes, we have talked with, right, the Lemon Project. Yeah. And so that's another whole source of information that needs to be looked through, and I imagine we have 4 students this summer. I think it's 4. Is that right? They're coming. They're accepting now. So
3.5 right now, I think.
3.5. Okay, so we have 3.5 students, and but the Lemon Project is certainly one place that will want to put effort into taking apart what they've done.
And I just also want to give a little shout out. Megan Dern, who's here, who's joined us, is the youth missioner for the diocese, the Episcopal Diocese of Southern Virginia, and is interested in doing a kind of pilgrimage project this summer too.
Oh, wonderful.
So there might be some possibilities for collaboration there as well. I do want to give people a chance. We've still got 20 minutes, so I want to give other people a chance to ask questions of Kay and Jackson, things that have kind of resonated for you, or what's on your mind and heart. I've got several too, but I want to give other people a chance too.
Hi, I'm Satoshi Ito, and I was with the sociology department for 37 years. And I'm really, really glad to see 2 of you this evening, because I just haven't been able to have contact, with my colleagues from the past. It's been more than 20 years. See, I've been retired for more than 20 years right now. And I'm really glad to see people with your interest and your talents and taking advantage of our 1960s national environment, see, I came to William Mary in 1965, and I think Kathleen mentioned that she was born right about that time, and I was already here. So I'm really, really pleased that, the college has hired such good people like yourselves, and that you're involving students to participate in research in the area and so on. So I'm really happy as a sociologist to know that people like you are carrying things at William Mary. That's it.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful to hear your voice, and the social justice policy initiative that we have started in sociology. There are several students who are just so passionate about the work, and some of them are receiving Ito Award this year, who've been doing that work. So we are very very excited about this initiative and all the work and partnering up with the Institute for Pilgrimage Studies just seemed to fit perfectly with this particular project and our goals. Yeah.
I wanted to.
And I just want to say hi to George.
George says hi back. I wanted to say that this will be fantastic for students. As a community member, and particularly as a member of St. Martin's and BBC, we have done an awful lot of reading and Zoom conversation and kind of a deep dive personally with Sacred Ground and Becoming Beloved Community. That has been incredible. I wouldn't trade it for anything. But to physically walk in community, in our community, will be, enactment is the wrong word, but it will be living this and weaving it together, I think, in a very beautiful way. And also a way to introduce it to people who've not. We're all on a journey, and we're all at different places. So I see this as an opportunity for anyone, wherever they are on the journey. And it's action, so it gets us moving.
I think in looking at Blanche's comment as well, the range of individuals and groups who can take advantage of a trail like this. It's broad, it should be broad, it should be accessible. And yeah, certainly I would hope that the local schools would be able to benefit from it as well.
Well, yes.
Andy asked above if you have certain stops in mind already, and if you could tell us about any of those.
I think one that just suggests how fundamentally we need to see with different eyes is the waist or so high brick wall that encircles the campus, or what we think of as old campus here. I think for our students, that's a useful seat for a homecoming parade. For the rest of it might not be much of anything. For Black women and men who grew up in Williamsburg, it tells a very different story, sends a very different message. And I think that may suggest how the landscape that we operate in and live in and take for granted, I think in many respects, just based on our particular experience, can really be reimagined, I think usefully.
Have you had conversations with Colonial Williamsburg? I do know that it's been a number of years ago now. They reenacted a slave auction, and that might be another stop on the pilgrimage.
Yeah, I think Colonial Williamsburg is going to be an important to engage and to think about all of the. I am blanking right now. They on a play that they did last year. Did anyone what was that name of the play that they did? Nobody's. Anyway, they have, certainly in terms of creative works too, I think there's a group now that it would be exciting to interact with, and some who were sociology majors too who are at work in that. So I'm hoping to, yes, absolutely, make some links there.
And your question really goes back to the experience of Williamsburg's Black community. Christy Coleman, who's now the executive director of Jamestown Yorktown Foundation, of course, was the lead on creating that estate auction and started it because she didn't want to ask anyone else to go through that experience. And she has spoken clearly and meaningfully about what being from the community and feeling unwelcome here at William and Mary, and then returning to receive an honorary degree last year, I think it was. So that's a great point. Stephen Seals is leading Colonial Williamsburg's African American programming now, and we're in touch with him through a related, and I'm sure we'll try to hook in with this at some point, but the city has been for months, but is in the process of designing a memorial to Dr. King, but more broadly to women and men who were active in the movement in Williamsburg. And so Stephen and I sit on that group together, and we're gonna definitely stay in touch with CW as we go forward.
I like Diane's comment about the trail and seeing the different layers over history and how you could dip into any one of those layers and discover things. And that certainly is true in Williamsburg, from Colonial Williamsburg, the college, the city. I know also that the state is involved at York River State Park. Within the last year, they have had walks out there by trail rangers and visits to the sites on that property. The whole park there basically were plantations. In fact, almost all the waterfront in our peninsula were plantations, and they have carved out several, and remains are there of slave quarters, of cemeteries. I meant to take it over the winter when I saw it offered, and of course we had a snowstorm, if you can believe that, and everything closed. But I have meant to go back. I went out and talked to the ranger shortly afterwards about what they were doing, and he promised me that they would start up again. So I think it's worth at least another call, and I'll do that to see what the state's doing. They're very concerned about the property they own, and it would be helpful, I think, if at some point we could see at different stages, different layers, like Diane was talking about, what this peninsula looked like. What was the plantation at Ewell Hall like? I've mentioned that to people before. They're all over, and they've just gotten lost, and it's good to go back and to be able to see them. And I think we all can maybe take a certain area and do some work and make it available to somebody. Maybe you guys from the college are the perfect people to get back to, in addition to our own circles. That's my thought about that.
Tom, I just wanted to say I was taken by your description before of the slave trail and how it needed work, and I guess others who, Dean and Ruth, getting lost the first time in the construction, and it really speaks to the care and attention, the constant care and attention that an effort like this needs over time.
I would just mention too, I got a book recently, and I know we're all plugging books here, but this was a book called The Richmond Slave Trade. And I had just come across it recently, and he spends the book talking about the slave trail and the slave trade and the different people involved. And one of the things I found so interesting was that at Lumpkin's jail, I think someone has mentioned Lumpkin's jail, Mr. Lumpkin eventually got out of the business and married a Black woman, which struck me as so bizarre. That after all the horrible things he did, he settled down and may have turned a corner and turned out to be perhaps a nice person after all. But I didn't get to see Lumpkins up there. I don't think the ruins are there anymore, but it's somewhere on that property, the prison where they were kept and sold.
I was just thinking, somebody said, that just kind of the looking at the wall, like never seeing the perspective of how it appears to the Black residents of Williamsburg. I actually lived in Tyler Hall my freshman year, and never until tonight did I know Tyler. I put together Tyler as a slaveholder, of course. So, that's part of the peeling of the layers, I guess, that I think we're all doing. And it's just like, you don't see it till you see it. And then when you see it, there it is.
Mhm.
Jackson, I was just wondering if because my dad is from Alabama too. I think we've talked about this. I wondered if your trips there and this whole pilgrimage process has, you said travel for transformation. If it's changed, your connection to your Alabama roots in any way.
Well, my first response is I just have to tell you this. So the chief deputy clerk of the Middle District of Alabama Federal District Court, I call to try to schedule an audience with one of the judges there. And we had been on the phone for about 2 minutes, and he said to me, "So you're John Billy's grandson." So if that gives you a sense of the fact that Alabama is a small town. And so I think he would be the son-in-law of my step grandmother on my mother's side. Literally. And what's even funnier to me about that is when I told I thought this was a great revelation, and I told my mother, and she was completely unmoved. She said, "Oh yeah, that's Trey. Sure. Okay, whatever." So anyway, that was odd. It more substantively, it really has given me occasion to talk to my parents in more sustained ways. My parents were the age of many of the children who participated in Project C in Birmingham in 1963. My mother's about a year and a half older than 3 of the 4 young women who were killed on September 15th, 1963. And they were growing up about an hour outside Birmingham. And it's alarming how little they can report to you about what was transpiring in those times. So I think being able to, and I return to erasure. So thanks to whomever put that in the conversation. I think it's useful for me and for our students to understand that, well, as Dr. Lafayette said, I thought this was incredibly revealing. So he was a freedom rider, went to Selma on SNCC's behalf 5 years before Bloody Sunday. Before the history that we know in Selma. He was there for years before that. And he was very generous with his time. And toward the end, he said, the people who opposed us are still alive too. And that was quite a good sort of reorientation. So short answer is yes. And in complicated ways, I guess.
Lisa and hi, Kathy. We talk about the layers, but what one interesting fact that I found out, Gabriel Prosser, who was the slave leader of the rebellion in 1800 in Richmond, that was hanged there on the property that you walk on, and got his inspiration from the people of Haiti, which we have spent the last 3 or 4 years sending groups to Haiti. And when we've gone there, we've gone to the Haitian Museum and listened to them talk about their experiences in their revolution for freedom and their attitude toward Thomas Jefferson and some of the presidents that pretty much ignored what went on down there because they didn't want anything like that to happen in the United States because that would have been devastating. And so there are many, many layers to this. And Haiti is having such a hard time now, but that's part of the story. And it's international. It's just, I get goosebumps when I saw that too.
Yeah, it's all connected. And I'm just so grateful for this time together and for your work, Kay and Jackson, for the way you told the story. Because that's how all this happens, right? Is in the story of our lives and how we work together and things that aren't coincidences, and you know, how that all inspires us and comes together. I mean, there's just so many points of connection in what you've shared with stuff that we've been working on. You know, it just feels like just feel a lot of grace in the conversation. And we're on a pilgrimage at St. Martin's, looking back at our past, and the first service of St. Martin's was the week after that 16th Street bombing. It was September 22nd, 1963. So, you know, just the more I think about the context of the founding of our parish and what our founders were trying to do, you know, the more inspiring it is, and the more important it is to remember and to record. And so you've got some willing fans and partners and cheerleaders for everything that you're doing, and just thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank you for this. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I hope we have many more discussions.
Yeah, that would be great. We'd love that. We're going to stay on for a short Becoming Beloved Community meeting, to which anyone is welcome to stay. But if you need to get on to the rest of your night, I will release you for that as well. Thanks again. Oh, I forgot one more plug. Next week, our evening will feature the venerable George Greenia and the rest of our sabbatical team, Rob and Lisa Bell and Blanche and Andy and Melanie Davis. Am I forgetting anybody? Is that everybody? It is. Just kind of connecting the dots with all of this in terms of what is a pilgrimage, how is what we're doing a pilgrimage, and what we're doing and what we'll keep doing through these 9 months. So I encourage you to come for that. Thanks.
Lisa, if that's half as much fun as the conversation before we began in earnest, I'll just say that I think it's going to be a good time. So
there is a certain spirit to the sabbatical team which cannot be reproduced. It can only be experienced. So yeah. George is George.
amen.
Amen. And so great to have Satoshi and Carolyn here too, and those connections. I just love all that. It's the bomb. Thanks everybody.
Thank you again.
If you're leaving, bye-bye. If you're staying, thanks for staying.
I didn't know if I should be leaving or staying, so I'll stay and see
You
if I
need to
should.
stay. Aren't you running the meeting? I thought you and Diane and Lisa Bell are running the meeting. No, Lisa Bell?
You're joking, I know that.
I thought you were chairing. Well, I'm only half joking, because as part of the process of my sabbatical, I am trying to, you know, get myself out of the leadership slot and empower all of you for leadership. So, but this is in lieu of, you know, our normal fourth Tuesday slot. I just trying to practice what I preach about not overwhelming everyone with too much content and meetings and everything else. So so this is our opportunity to share what we need to share, both kind of from our hearts and anything that we need to update each other on about what the different working groups are doing, and look towards the next few months. Diane, you're muted.
Unmute.
Can't hear you,
You're
Diane.
muted.
I was laughing out loud during the other one, so I had to mute myself. Anyway, I'll get my part over with quickly. Justice in Lisa's wonderful suggestion that was welcomed at our meeting. And in short, our job on the justice team is in providing opportunities to make a difference. So we track groups in town and try to keep up with them. And we will be at least providing the leaders of the different groups with links and notices. So I just sent one to the justice team, and I'd like you all to know about it. And that is that the Lemon Project at William and Mary next Monday night at 6 p.m., I believe, on the link,